wonder what. Well, good morning, everyone. It's good to see everybody that's on. You folks that are zooming in can see that we have John Roberts here and Dan Smith and myself. And Randy Brock is here, but he's on two committees at the same time this morning, and he's in the other one right now, but will be popping in. And I'd like to get started. We're going to be working with the organic folks this morning. That's what our schedule is basically on. And I'd like to have the members introduce themselves before we get started. Dan?
I'm Dan Smith, attorney in Montpelier, used to work for the legislature many years ago. My specialty in law practice is milk price regulation.
John?
I'm John Roberts. I'm the executive director of the Champlain Valley Farmer Coalition, an farmer advocacy group based in Middlebury, Vermont.
Michael?
Good morning, Representative Michael Markoff from Coventry. I represent Coventry, Irisburg, Newport City, Newport Town, and Troy, and I chair House Commerce and Economic Development.
John?
Good morning. I'm John O'Brien, Representative John O'Brien. I represent Royalton and my hometown of Tunbridge, and I serve on the House Committee on Agriculture and Forestry.
And Heather?
Good morning. I'm Heather Darby. I work for the University of Vermont Extension, and I'm an agronomist and soil specialist.
Jackie?
Morning, everyone. My name's Jackie Folsom. I'm the legislative director for the Vermont Farm Bureau and a retired dairy farmer.
Yeah. And we also have with us this morning Secretary of Ag, Hanson. Oh, you're coming up. Okay.
I don't know.
We'll get, yeah, that's fine. You're first on our schedule.
Did it work?
Yep.
I gotta convert them into two.
We have as our first two guests, Anson Tebbett, Secretary of Ag. And we also have Diane Bosfeld with us, who works closely with the Secretary. And EB5 from the Dairy Division is also on Zoom and with us. So, Anson, we all were shocked back a few weeks ago when we heard that Horizon was pulling out of the state, and we already had our programs sort of scheduled with conventional farmers at that last meeting, just about when that broke. And we had the organic farmers scheduled to testify at this meeting. And you were setting up a task force or a group of people to work with the Horizon Dairy folks, I believe, and was wondering how that was going, how you were making out, and give us an update on that, because I guess there's 28 farms that are going to lose their home for their production. It's a pretty serious issue. So if you could give us an update on how that's all transpiring and going, we'd appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Senator, and thank you, members of the task force. I'm not sure the protocol. Am I to keep the mask on when I testify, or can I take it off? I'm not sure.
Well, I guess we're supposed to wear them.
Okay, that's fine. I don't know. That's fine.
We're
Luckily,
12
my
feet
cows.
apart. I'm not too concerned, but the rules are.
Okay.
the rules.
Great, I just want to make it clear on that. Well, thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here again, in person, at the State House, and it's been a long time since I've been in the building. The building looks great, and adapted to a lot of wonderful technology. Just to begin, a couple of notes. I'm here to just give you an update on the Danone Horizon decision to stop buying milk from dairy farmers in the Northeast, outside the Vermont border as well. Since this decision a few weeks ago, the agency and many have been working on solutions. We formed a task force that's been meeting and looking at possible solutions. You'll hear more from Diane, who's with me today, Diane Boffel, who is chairing that task force. And there's a lot of positive energy in this group. A few thoughts. Our goal in this task force is to gather the best possible information so those businesses can make informed decisions on the next steps. So we're gathering information, best possible information, so they can make informed decisions on next steps for these farmers. We have been trying to help with our neighbors as well. We've included New York, New Hampshire, and Maine. USDA also has been involved with our group. It's a high priority of federal officials to find a solution. We've already had meetings with USDA and more are planned. It's important to note that this may involve a regional approach. We know milk moves across our borders and comes and goes. We are fortunate in Vermont to have the Northeast Dairy Innovation Center already in Vermont. It's housed at the Agency of Agriculture. It could play an important role because we already have strong relationships with our counterparts in New Hampshire, Maine, and in New York. The group is led by Laura Ginsburg, and she'll be working with her colleagues in those states as we try to find a solution. A little bit of background, some of the details that we know at this point. 89 dairy farmers in Vermont, Maine, New York, and New Hampshire were notified recently that Horizon Danone will no longer buy their milk. And these contracts will end on the end of August of next year. So we have about a year to figure out a solution. Danone and Horizon have been communicating with us. We have an open dialogue with them. We've had a couple of phone calls with them, also exchanges through email. And one of their decisions, they said their decision was based on mainly transportation costs. They do not have any processing plants in New England or the Northeast. So they're bringing some of their farmers in those regions on board that are closer to where they process their milk. This will allow them to, some of their farmer members, to maybe expand their operations that are closer to their plants, or actually put on new dairy farmers that are closer to their plants in the Midwest and West.
So what is, if I may, what is happening to the milk that's produced here in the East at the present time? Is it transported all the way to the Midwest?
They were saying that, I believe it's Western New York is one location where they're transporting it. And they were saying, I think it's like 1,000 miles, they're transporting some of this milk.
Round trip.
Round trip.
So it's out beyond Buffalo.
And the other, if they're not going to the plant near Buffalo, they're going to Virginia.
They're not going to Buffalo, it's being taken to Virginia, the milk.
We're going south.
So with the working group and the task force, we have been focused on mainly getting the best information to our farmers. So that's one group that's been working on outreach, communication, and assistance. We have put together a resource page for our farmers that can be found on our webpage. And just last Friday, we put a long list of information for our dairy farmers so they can get the information at their fingertips. One thing we're focused on, as we all know, our dairy farmers are busy milking cows, getting their crops in, and we want to make sure that they have one place where they can turn to and they can get the information quickly. They don't need 6,000 people calling them and having to go out. So we're trying to get information for them that's readily available for them, so they have it easily at their fingertips. So that's one group that's been working on the communications, the assistance, and the outreach. We've also been discussing this situation with processors, willingness to buy more milk. Diane will go into more detail, but we've got some surveys out to our processors, asking them if they possibly could take on more milk. We're looking at funding for our farmers and our processors. Is there any funding out there possible to help in the solution? So that's one of the subgroups that's been working on that particular issue. We also have a project looking at the organic standards. The critics of this current approach that's out there now say there are differences across the United States with the organic standards. And we have a working group addressing that, as well as we're working closely with our federal delegation on some of those issues as well on the organic standards. As I mentioned, we're working on a regional coordination activities with the Northeast Dairy Business Innovation Center and also with the region's Department of Agriculture in Maine, New York, and in New Hampshire. I've had conversations with all the secretaries and commissioners in those states because this decision by Danone and Horizon impacts their farmers as well. Possible solutions, and I would highlight that these are possible. It's too early to say what the solution will be, but we're exploring a number of options. Can we build more processing in our region or in Vermont to help process some of this milk? Are there some entrepreneurs out there willing to stand up organic product or value-added product? So that is one of the solutions we're looking at, whether we can find a new buyer, an entrepreneur, or a business. We also been involved with Organic Valley and Stonyfield. They are two of the leading buyers of organic milk in the region already. So we've been discussing with them, could they add more milk, buy more milk from these farmers, take on these farmers. So we have good communication with those groups, so that possibly could be a solution as well. Transportation. Transportation is a big issue regardless if it's organic or conventional milk. We're hearing lack of drivers. They've got a number of issues related to meeting climate goals as well. So transportation, moving milk around the region is a serious concern both for organic and the conventional market. So I think any solution here, we have to look at transportation. We also have a lot of interest in the regenerative agriculture movement, and these farmers are in the forefront of that. So if they leave, then we've got some issues there as well. A lot of these are really working on that project. So how does that impact our trying to improve the environment and climate change? And as I mentioned, the Northeast Dairy Business Innovation Center is housed at the Agency of Agriculture. We do have federal funding in that realm. But is it possible that we can find more funding to address this particular issue of impacting these 28 farms, but more importantly, the 89 within the region? So again, the Northeast Dairy Innovation Center may play a role in this, particularly if we get into maybe some infrastructure needs. So that's some of that work. Diane has much more detail about what she's been working on with the task force. She can go into detail about who's on it, what they're working on, and some of the information we've already delivered to the dairy farmers through this. Diane?
Yeah, thank you. Are there any questions from any of the committee members of Anson before we move on to Diane? No, all good? Yeah, thank you, Anson. Maybe questions at the end.
Thank you for having us in this morning. And yes, it's interesting to be back here in the legislative, our state house, beautiful building, feels like forever. since you've been here. I think I want to talk to you about who is on the task force. We have representatives from the Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets, Agency of Commerce and Community Development, Agrimark, Agricultural Service Providers, Dairy Farmers of America Co-op, Morrison Feeds, Nofa Vermont, Organic Valley, Stonyfield, Vita VAC, which is a lender, Vermont Cheese Council, the Vermont Congressional Delegation, Vermont Farm Bureau, and Vermont Farm and Forest Viability. And Liz is here today from Vermont Farm and Forest Viability as well. The goals of this task force, we are farmer-centered. This isn't about anything else about the farmers. That's it. We're going to provide options to these farmers, but we want to review them first. We don't want wild goose chases for the farmers. So we're getting a survey out to the processors. Is there real interest there, or are they just exploring? We don't want exploratory. We'll have those conversations with those processors before we send something out to the farmers to look at. We don't want any wild goose chases for the farmers. That processor survey, E.B. Flory is on today. She's the head of our dairy section. She's working on that processor survey, and we'll get that out soon and get that information back of who might be interested or possible to add milk. Maybe they're adding an organic line. Maybe they're a value added, which is going to pay the price the farmers need, but may or may not need the organic certification. We're not sure yet. We've got a survey. We've got to get that information. Then we want to have all these options together for farmers around January or February of 2022. So they have time to work with farm viability, the service providers. What's the best option for a farm? Maybe all 28 go at the same time to someplace, or maybe it's one going to a cheesemaker, or one choosing to maybe go to goat's milk, or one choosing, maybe they're going to do grass-fed beef. We don't have all the options together yet. We want to have viable options for the farmers to look at and make their own decisions. They're not all going to be easy decisions. We don't know what we're going to get yet, so hopefully we'll have some very good options for farmers, but there's work to be done. The task force, what we've done so far, the farmer survey group has been working. They have 5 farms left to talk to. That survey is about more details on the individual farms. What's their milk volume? Where we know where they are. What's their milk volume? What's their component level? What's their butter fat? What's their protein? Do they have a low somatic cell count? Are they grass-based? Are they feeding fermented feeds? All the things that a buyer might want to know, getting that in one place. The farmers have the choice on the level of confidentiality of that information. It's their information. And that's not even being housed at the agency to make sure there's no public records request to the agency. Separate and distinct. The web page is up for the agency. If you go to our homepage, in the search, use Danone, and you'll get the page. Materials are there for the farmers. Our notes will be there from the task force meeting so people can keep track of what's going on. The resource list has been linked and sent to this committee, this task force today, so you have that. That resource list has been also vetted to make sure we have the specific person to call. We're not having farmers go into voicemail and maybe they get somebody, maybe they don't. This is the person to call to get an answer. We have resources from Farm First, if there's stress and anxiety, which there could certainly be. We have ag mediation. We have the Vermont Law School to be able to work with farmers on the legalities of the contract they have from Horizon and or any of these options. If there's legal questions or mediation type work, those 2 resources have been provided there. We have the numbers of the specific buyers, Stonyfield and Organic Valley. We have the information for Horizon of who to call if there's questions there. So, and farm viability, all their access and how to get help there. So that is all out. That went to farmers Friday afternoon. It's also on our webpage, and you've been provided that as well. The survey, I'm going to let EB speak to that. We've had regional discussions. I see Jackie's here from Farm Bureau. Farm Bureau had a regional meeting. They're looking into this in the impacted states, and we're sharing information with Farm Bureau to be helpful in those states as well. And Secretary Tebbetts spoke to meeting with USDA. So what are we going to continue to do? We have to collect the remainder of the data from the farmers. We have about 5 left. There's 2 in New Hampshire. We've included them in our group. There are one's along the Connecticut River Valley, one's a little further in to the state, but we've included them in our group, and the commissioner from New Hampshire knows that, and he's grateful for our assistance. We have to finalize and get the processor survey out and get the information back. And then we need to follow up with those interested processors to make sure what options, what are they bringing forward? What's possible, what's needed. They might need a whole new silo. They might need a new cheese vat. They might need, I don't know what they're going to need, but how can we connect with them, determine what's needed, get a timeline if they need to build something or order something? Can we get grants associated with that? So really, once a processor steps forward, really trying to pull those resources in to help that processor get ready. And then the goal would be to provide, hopefully it's like a one-sheeter to the farmers with, here's an option. Who do you call? What are they offering? What do they want? You know, haven't quite got that ready yet, but we're thinking about those things for January, about something simple that farmers can look at and say, oh, that might work for me, or no, not that one, what else you got? So we'll be pulling that together, but it really is key in Vermont about a willing processor coming forward. We can talk about, you know, I have a lot of people contacting, wanting to talk about markets. I'm like, well, if we don't have anybody processing it, we ain't got nothing to market. So that is a big step, is who might come forward. I don't know. I hope someone does. So we're reaching out, working on those things. On the regional level, we know there's other processors outside of Vermont, Southern New England as well. After we've done the work in Vermont, Maine is doing similar work. We can share our information. We may reach out to the other Southern New England states and see if they can help us with a processor survey there and see if there's any interested parties as well. So a lot of information to be gathered. We're just in the beginning, but if EB would be willing to talk about what's in the processor survey, I think that would be helpful as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Diane. Are there any questions for Diane at this point? Any members on Zoom have any questions for Diane at this point? If not, we'll move on to EB in regards to the processors. Morning, EB.
Good morning, Senator Starr. Sorry I couldn't be there in person today. So the processor survey, a group from the task force have been working on that we plan to go out this week, would be going out to all Vermont milk handler license holders, which does not just include Vermont processors. It includes any processor that purchases Vermont milk, whether it's in-state or out-of-state, and also processors that distribute milk within the state. So it's a large contingent of people that we will be sending the survey to. We're fine-tuning the survey, and then I'm also working on making sure that the digital link to fill out this survey will actually go to the right person that we need to at the facility to see this. And the survey is really to just encompass gauging if there's any interest in any facility, one, taking on more milk, and if it is more milk, how much, how far would you be willing to have it hauled? Would you be interested in organic milk or things like that? And then it also includes a large section of, if you were to take on or process more milk, what would you need support on, whether it's research and development, a new product that you want to do a new line on? Is it equipment? Is it marketing? Is it distribution? Is it hauling? That is the issue. We've been hearing a lot about milk hauling issues from all sorts of processors and just the logistics of that and the cost of things. And so we're trying to send out a survey to one, gauge if there is any interest whatsoever in taking on more milk. And then we would take the data for those that are interested and try to have data given to these processors on farmers or their locations and allow it to be a situation where the farmers could proceed with, is this a viable option? This person is near me or they're willing to ship my milk, and would these things work? We're not trying to, as the agency, dictate where people go or anything like that. We're trying to collect as much data as possible and any avenues that need to be explored that could give these dairy farmers a viable option to continue operating as they are now.
Yeah. Thank you, EB. We're talking, I believe, about finding a home for 3 million pounds of milk roughly. Is that what I read or saw somewheres, or is that?
Right now, Horizon states that there's a tractor trailer load per day in coming out of Vermont. So that could be anywhere. We're gathering that data. We have 5 more farms to put in. We're up around 22 million a year from those 28 farms right now. So it's not in a month's time. If it were 60,000 and if it was full times 30 is 1.8 million. Is that right?
You're close.
I'm close.
You're close.
It's not 18 million, 1.8 million.
Yeah.
1.8 million a month. So if it were a full tractor trailer, I don't think it's full. So that's why we're doing the farmer survey specifically. How much are you shipping every other day? And trying to get those numbers tightened up. We have 5 more farms to go, but with the farms we've collected plus the 2 in New Hampshire, we're looking at 22 million a year. Which, to put that in context, 1 LFO makes that much milk in a year easily, if not more.
Yeah, and that's why I asked the question is, how big of a processor would you need to have to take care of that amount of milk, or how much of that milk could be divided up between Stonyfields and Brattleboro to, you know, make up the milk. So a large LFO then produces that much milk themselves, more than that.
Most of the LFOs are somewhere between 25 and 30 million a year.
Yeah. And the other question I have, does Commerce and Community Development, do they have federal money that could go to help if a present processor wanted to expand, to help them with a silo or with cooling plates or whatever they need for additional equipment to take this product on?
Yeah, we've been, Kate Brooks, I believe, was on the meeting on Friday as a member of the task force. So we are engaged with Commerce Agency. You know, it's too early to say, you know, where all the federal money is going to land. But if there ever was a time there might be some out there, this would be the time. So we're blessed with that. But they're at the table, and as we get closer to knowing possible solutions, you know, we are looking at funding where possibly we could get funding if there is a processor solution or any solution within our borders. So yes.
John?
I'm just curious, are these 28 farmers scattered all over the state, top to bottom, side to side? So transportation, even in the state, it will be an issue for some of them.
Yeah, they're not concentrated in one location. You know, one down in Orwell, there's, you know, a number in Orange County, there's Randolph, there's a couple in Franklin County, they're all over. So that's, and they're on the back roads. You know, these are not going to be, not all of them are going to be on the blacktop as well. So that was one of the things that Horizon pointed to us, was that transportation became the leading issue here for them. They did not want to, you know, put trucks on these back roads and then haul it all the way to, Buffalo or Virginia. That was their message to us.
Yep.
Dan?
So has that changed over time? Was Horizon moving the milk closer and recently they're moving it farther?
Yeah, the history of Horizon started in Vermont back in 2004. They were the second major buyer to come in. Organic Valley was the first. Organic Cow was the very first. Once Organic Cow ended, it became Organic Valley and Horizon that were the main buyers in Vermont, and Horizon was processing in the Northeast. Horizon's been through a lot of buyouts. Danone is the last owner. They were bought out by Dean at one point, and Danone is the last owner. I can't think of all the other owners, but Danone's the last owner, and they're consolidating processing to their larger plants.
So where were they processing? What's where did they start and where did they go? And then where did they land?
You have to go back and dig into that. I don't have it off the top of my head. I know it was Northeast, but where exactly? When they were owned by Dean Foods, I would imagine it was probably in a Dean Foods plant, but I got to go back and verify that.
So from their perspective, the big problem has been that the processing has become much more remote, and that puts the pressure on the transportation.
Well, they've decided to centralize their processing. So when we asked them about, could we help you find a processor in the Northeast? They said, well, you could try, but we're consolidating our processing.
So it's a combination of it.
It's a company decision of where they're going to process.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Just one more, sorry. That Horizon, where did they originally come from? Are they a Midwest company?
Western.
Aurora
Dairy in Colorado.
Okay, thank you.
Was like the original member, and then they started bringing in farms. But they built a lot of farms in the Northeast,
Yeah.
especially Vermont and Maine.
So
They were like a main driving force of building a competitive organic market. Because Organic Valley, Organic Cow started, Horizon and Organic Valley came in and picked those farms up when the Organic Cow went. They kind of went back and forth of who had the most farms for quite a while between Organic Valley and Horizon.
Yep. Thank you.
John, did you have a question?
Thanks, Bobby. This is, I guess, for anybody. How does, who pays for the transportation of this milk? Does it ultimately the farmers, or does Horizon pay to get Vermont or New England milk to Virginia, say?
Both. The farmers have a rate per hundredweight that usually is about assembling the load, and then moving the load to the processor is usually might be 100% Horizon, might be split, but also considered proprietary information. So we probably won't get that unless you want to subpoena it.
Okay, I was just wondering, since 1 year is such a short time, if Horizon might be open, if there was federal and state, say New England, subsidizing of this transportation, so Horizon could get this milk essentially for free to its plants, would they potentially give us another year or whatever, some date?
When we had that conversation with Horizon, we asked if something were close to being ready, maybe a month or two or 3 months or 6 months, that we've got a processor, but they've got to install whatever. They got to get a new vat and a new silo and a new whatever. Would they consider that? And they said they'd consider it when we brought something forward. So, it wasn't no, but it sure wasn't a resounding yes either. Bring us a proposal and we'll talk about it. Which, yes, that could include getting the hauling paid for, or I don't know what else, but they were willing to talk about it as we get closer to August 2022.
Thank you. Heather, you have a question?
Yeah, Diane, I'm wondering if, so did they say, it's none of our business, I guess, but did they say they were making up that amount of milk by bringing on other farms, or how are they? Or were they,
Yeah,
did they just have a surplus anyway? And so this was an easy way to, you know, get over.
My understanding, Heather, was that they were either going to allow their existing dairy farmers closer to their plants to expand, or they would put on new members that were closer to those processing plants. So they did address that with us.
It's not an oversupply issue,
So,
not for them.
Anson, you mentioned sort of these differences in organic rules per se, and I think probably that's been a big bone of contention with lots of farmers across this country, because what I'm imagining is that they're going to have more expansion of big Western organic dairies, which has really brought up a lot of issues with organic certification and access to pasture and, everybody following the same rules. Is that what you were referring to?
There has been, over time, a lot of critics have been critical of USDA about not enforcing the standards. That is one component of what the task force is looking at. We've been engaged with the federal delegation, and I believe the federal delegation is working on a regional letter that will be sent to USDA in the coming weeks, and that will be a component of that. We also discussed it with USDA when we were on the phone with them prior, I guess it was last week, and that issue did come up from the commissioners within the region. So I think that may be more of a long-term issue that needs to be addressed, and I think everyone is on board with that. So yeah, it's part of the discussion about these standards and are they being enforced evenly across the country.
Thanks. And my last question is, are they afraid of losing market share on the east of the backlash of, let's say, some of the grocery stores stopping carrying Horizon because Horizon not support their local communities? Has there been any conversation around that, about their products not selling here?
Part of our conversation when we were on the phone with them, we asked clearly, are you going to stop distributing your finished product in the Northeast? And their answer was, of course not. So they're going to still provide finished product to the Northeast with no source of milk in the Northeast. So I'm not sure where any boycott or any of that aspect will go. There's been a lot of growling and grumbling on the social media, but I don't know how long that will last. I think they're banking on the fact that won't last.
Well, I stopped buying Horizon milk. It's the only gallon jugs you can get in Hannaford's, just an FYI. And Hannaford's is a local company. And my husband went to get his 2 gallons of Horizon, and I told him we'd be getting a divorce if he put it in the cart. So, I mean, yeah, all right.
I know.
Yeah, like, oh, okay. I mean, just, just a word, I just wonder what, yeah, I mean, I want to support all dairy farmers, of course, but I wonder who we should be supporting anyway.
But Heather, on the social media, the farmers who are involved in this have been very clear about, please buy Horizon until our contracts are done, because otherwise they're still sending milk to Horizon, and unless they've chosen to do something else or go out of business. So on social media, several of those Horizon farmers chimed in and said, please, if you're going to boycott, wait until they've stop taking milk from us, because we are still supplying milk to Horizon. So I understand that was the gut reaction, was let's start boycotting. But the farmers that were on the media were pretty clear about, please wait until we're done.
So who co-packs the Hannaford's Nature's Choice brand? Who does that? It's organic.
I don't know.
Joyce?
I'd have to look at code, maybe Evie can look it up if there's a code, but we'd have to look for the code on the bottle. I don't know. Hannaford
Just
does the
curious.
processing.
Yeah,
Yeah, they process some at Booth Brothers. You know, I know their store brand milk is Booth Brothers in Barry. I don't know who's doing an organic brand for them. We'd have to look up the code and figure it out.
that might be an interesting avenue to pursue, Diane, because, you know, they have a lot of share in the Northeast. And that's what I started buying anyway.
Yeah, thank you.
I didn't
John.
verbally attack anybody on the internet, just my husband. So don't worry, Jackie, I didn't. He takes the brunt of all my attacks.
John, did you have, I see your hand up. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I did, Bobby. Thank you. I just wondered, while we have Anson and Diane here, if some of these 28 dairy farms want to start looking elsewhere, what's the agency's support if, say, they want to go transition to goats or they want to transition to beef, or they just, because there's value in being an organic farm and equity too, I would suspect. So if they, even organic hay, for example, or organic crops, just where will the agency encourage that?
Well, I think we're gonna give them the best information that we have at the time. I mean, these are individual businesses, they're private businesses, and what we need to do is just give them the best information in a timely manner. You know, some may choose to make a decision before our work is done, or maybe they're going to, you know, and something may come along that works for them and maybe decide to do that. So we'll just try to get the best information to them. And if there's opportunities for funding or transitioning, we will certainly look at that. But yeah, so, you know, some probably will have to make decisions before, or want to make decisions before next September.
Yeah, the plan, John, is to get our information sheets out in January, February. Farmers have plenty to do right now. You know, they're cropping, they're finishing up, getting ready for fall, starting to button stuff up. So, you know, if somebody wants to start looking at something, you know, certainly we put out the information about farm viability to help them review what's possible, business plan, think about your finances. Should you be utilizing your money differently in preparation for next August? You know, what should you be thinking about? So there's resources available now, but we're being clear with the farmers that we expect to pull together a suite of options for you to be looking at in January and February. So you can go now, you can do whatever you want. We know that some of the farmers, we heard from one who has called every cheesemaker she can think of in her area to see what's happening, but that's like shooting a shotgun with a scatter shot. What we're trying to do is help bring it in of these people are interested, they want to talk to you, instead of, boom, you know, shoot everywhere and see what you might hit, which is time consuming and can be frustrating for the farmer. So if they want to do it now, good for them. No stopping them. Farm viability is ready to help them, ready to look into anything, but we're trying to pull together information and options so it's not such a scattershot for them running around trying to do this without some tighter direction.
Okay, John, John Roberts.
Just a really quick comment on grass-fed beef. What I'm hearing from my members who are in is a frustration with processing, a big frustration with processing. And I don't know all the details, whether we're actually short of processing or whether it's just a managing the flow of animals. But, you know, hopefully that be part of the conversation. If that's going to be offered or presented as an option to some of these people.
Yeah, I would just say that that's, you know, again, it's another issue is infrastructure processing. Also need, we need some work on that, and we've got multiple strategies both on the state and the federal level to work on that so we can get more of the processing done for our meat industry as well. But there are similarities between the dairy and the meat. We need the processing, it needs to be efficient, it needs to be timely to make a difference. So we're working on that front as well.
Yeah, a quick question, because we got to move on. Has there been many people apply for help to enhance their processing of meat that we
Yeah.
put together? for you folks?
Those applications are out, and, you know, from the discussions of the folks, they think that the 500,000 that's out there through working lands, it won't take too long for that to go. So I think we're gonna need, going forward, we're gonna need more dollars to have a real impact. But those applications, people can start applying for that money right now to working lands. I believe it's open till November 1st, if I saw.
Yeah,
They're out.
and that, you're
Yeah.
promoting that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've had a couple press releases and through social media with that. But yeah, so that's great to have that money. That will help, but we just got to keep plugging away on that as well. It may take more resources to make a bigger statewide change.
Yeah, thank you, Ed. Are there any other questions from any of the members for Anson, Diane, EB at this point in time? If not, thank you for your time. Been very generous, and sounds like you've got a lot going on to try to help these folks as we move forward through this year of grace time that we have. So again, thanks a lot to you, and good luck, and hopefully we'll find a home for the ones that want to switch homes.
And just one final thought, the other folks that are not producing organic have been very supportive of this, and they want to help as well. So the conventional market, we've had a number of farmers reach out to us and say, yes, how can we help as well? So I think that's really speaks to how farmers stick together regardless of their practices. So that is very encouraging that they are reaching out and finding ways to help in that aspect as well. So that's great.
Cabot hasn't thought about doing an organic line of product, or Ben and Jerry's?
We are in discussions with, Cabot's been at the table with Agrimark and DFA, and all of them been at the table with our discussions. So I can't speak to where they're at, but they are looking, they're engaged with us. Hopefully maybe they can think of things to do as well. So they're at the table.
Yeah, maybe that one day they can't find any help to process regular milk and cheese, they could do organic. But anyway, thank you very much. And, if there's anything that this group can do to enhance your work, of course, don't be shy about Holly.
Thanks for your support. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, you guys.
Yeah.
So getting back to our schedule, we have Jennifer Lambert. I believe she is on Zoom. Jennifer, can you hear us? Yes, we can see you.
Can you hear me?
Yes. So good morning and welcome to our meeting. You run the chair of the Orange County Farm Bureau Group?
Yep. Yep.
And so the floor is yours.
So are you guys interested in hearing about the survey that I was sent? I don't know how you want me to.
Yes.
Okay. So we're an organic valley farm. We milk 120, got 100 or so heifers. We farm 600 acres, 100 or so are pasture, 30 acres of woodland. We've always been organic. We're a first generation farm with OV. We've been farming for 11 years now. The farm was organic when we purchased it, so there was no transition. Other information about the farm is that we do have a diversified income. We do custom cropping for other farms in Orange County. We do trail grooming for Bast. My husband does a lot of excavation. We sell meat. So we try to keep a real diversified income, try not to rely strictly on the milk income. But it is a little bit scary lately because a lot of our customers are obviously farmers. So it's scary to have a customer base with not a reliable income stream. So our cost of production, I believe, is around $26, $27, but it is hard for me to separate the custom cropping expenses out of that. But that's about as close as I can come to. Over the last 5 years, we've seen a high of 37, a low of 25. There is some seasonality in the way that we're paid. We're also on a quota. We've been under a quota for 4 years. So we're a co-op, so we don't have a contract per se. So do we have concerns about Organic Valley leaving? I don't have, my concern is related to what everyone's been talking about, the trucking. Trucking is a big concern. We just switched haulers, which I learned was because the old hauler just didn't want to pick us up anymore. And I asked Organic Valley if we should be concerned and about our region not getting picked up. And they did say that it's a problem they're experiencing across the whole country, is that they just can't find haulers. And I asked Greg Bisson if, kind of what the deal was. And he said that he just cannot find people to work for him. They either don't apply, or a lot of them are marijuana users so that they can't keep a CDL. A mix of reasons. Yeah, so I do wonder if in Vermont we're maybe at a more of a disadvantage with marijuana use being legal now, having maybe less CDL drivers because of that. I don't know. So do we have other income? Yes, we do. We have cropping, excavation, but it is a real concern that our customers are primarily farmers. Our account receivables get super high, and we've been getting stiffed with quite a few bills within the last 2 years. We've got 30,000+ out that I don't think we're going to be able to collect on. And I've talked to lawyers about it, and they said that it's pretty impossible to collect on these debts because I'll be last in a long line, banks and other debtors. There just won't be anything there left. So farm is our income. We don't have, say, off-farm job other than the other stream of income we have. The question was, is the milk price our biggest challenge? And I would say the price, along with our quota that we've been held to, is probably the biggest challenge. I also just feel real uncertain lately. The Horizon debacle really has scared me. Just seeing how uncertain the future really is. We're a young farm and we should be continuing to reinvest in infrastructure. And I'm real hesitant to. I'd almost at this point rather just continue investing in the excavation, something that I know that we can grow and actually collect on. Other challenges as a farm are labor availability. We have robots, so we don't need necessarily milking help, but any other help is very hard to find. Service are highly expensive, super high land rent, and then inability to collect debts that are owed is a big for us. The risk management programs, we do participate in DMC. We participate in the highest level, and it has helped. It has paid off. Would we like to improve our farm operation if we could? Yes, we would really like to figure out a way to grow grain. As an organic farmer, that's really where we're at a big disadvantage. We do not have any suitable corn ground to plow, so we're at the mercy of the grain truck. So if we could improve, that would be the biggest thing. And then to build a new facility to improve cow comfort, labor efficiency, because I do think the labor availability, that's just going to be a continuing problem. And we have found many individuals on our farm. We have robots, we have multiple cow management softwares, we genomic test, we have triple mowers, we no-till seed on our customers' land, we have mergers. Our equipment just seems to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's because the bigger equipment, we can get more done with less people. Yeah, so we try to be as efficient as possible. We're putting in a solar array right now. It should be functional by late fall. That was organized through Organic Valley, so that was super helpful. And what can the state do to help us be more innovative? I'm honestly not sure. I feel like we really have taken advantage of anything that we can find. What else? Quality improvement programs. I get honestly frustrated with the water quality programs. I wish there was more sensible regulation. I know that's more on federal level, but I get super frustrated when I see all these brand new manure pits and barnyards, things that the state and the federal government have built, and there's no cows in the barn. I think there needs to be more contingency planning that goes along with those projects. I've even heard farmers refer to those projects as gravestones, because once they're implemented, the farm seems to go out of business within a few years. And the task force, 3 issues. Like I said, I think the regulation is more of a federal issue, but less regulation. I'm stretched so thin. I don't have time for nutrient planning. We farm either way more help with them or money to just pay someone else to do them. I do not have time for a lot of these extra stuff. And, outside milk coming into the state really bothers me. Like what you guys were talking about before, Horizon is dropping the Northeast, but they're going to keep selling their products here. And I'm hoping that between Organic Valley and, some cheesemakers, we can pick up all that loose milk. But it's frustrating. Horizon's not giving up their market. They're just not picking up our farms. What else? Also, more of what you guys were talking about, too little processing in the state. We need a real large scale dairy processor, I think, maybe to help reduce some of the trucking and keep our milk here, keep it here. I think Vermonters care about Vermonters, and so we could probably sell maybe a Vermont product. Don't know if there's much of a market outside Vermont. I don't know if other people care about Vermont, but I know Vermonters care about Vermont. And one more vague thought that I have is I am nervous that so many dairy farms rely on such an expensive organic product being sold. Most people I know do not buy organic products because they are expensive. And it scares me that my farm is relying on selling a product to people that most people that I know can't afford. It's kind of market. I would like to see a new market somewhere in between the conventional and the organic that could really center on the regenerative ag practices and, you know, some real animal quality rules. That really people want in the end. And maybe it could be, you know, somewhere in between, something that people could actually afford and would be the best thing for animal welfare and environmental health. But that's what's going on in our world, and that's what I see. I'm just scared that maybe organic is not a long-term solution. That's my thought. But obviously, I have to do organic milk. Like I said, we're a first-generation farm, and that was the only way that the numbers would even crunch to sell organic milk.
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. Are there questions from committee members for Jennifer? Dan?
Two questions, Jennifer. Thank you very much. Where does your milk go when it leaves the farm?
Our milk goes to Stonyfield a lot of times, and sometimes it even goes to the Booth Brothers plant to get bottled as organic.
Okay, and intriguing idea between organic and conventional, starting to hear that a little bit. What's your gut sense of what a sustainable price would be for that to bring the cost down?
I think farms could survive on $20 milk if they could buy affordable grain. You know, $20.
Yeah.
Grain, organic grain, very expensive, and I don't see it getting any cheaper. And the other thing is organic grain is also a lower quality grain, which is frustrating. Paying more for a product that's not even as good as the conventional grain. Nutritionists often complain that the quality isn't there in the ingredients, and then the consistency, it's constantly changing. So, and like I said, if we weren't organic, we could grow some grain sources and we wouldn't be at the mercy of the grain truck. And I know a lot of people have switched to, you know, grass fed, but that is very hard to do. You have to be have a lot of pasture and really know what you're doing. And then, like what we were talking before about the trucking, it makes me nervous when people switch to grass and then start shipping a considerable less amount of milk. When you don't have a lot of product to ship at the end of that old dirt road, you know, you might just not get picked up one of these days.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Thank you.
All set. John, I think you have your hand up.
Yep, just to follow up on the earlier questions here, Jen, do you, and Heather probably knows this too, are there any dairy farms in Vermont that not grass fed, but that don't have a traditional grain bill, that they produce all their own corn or they crop, you know, even oats and other grains to feed their animals?
I don't know. That sounds like a Heather question.
There are a couple. But not.
Heather, you've been working on grains and what we could grow and be efficient at it. Maybe you could answer that more plainly.
Yeah, so there are a few, like 2 farms in Vermont that grow all their own grain. And one other that used to do that and then went grass only, so stopped growing grain completely. And then there are many farms now that are, and Jennifer mentioned this, like trying to figure out how to just incorporate corn silage on the organic side of things, because that would help a lot reduce the amount of grain that would need to be purchased. And but a lot of farms like Jennifer's, they're hill farms. They don't have land that's really suitable for corn silage. So it makes even that prospect difficult, but not that, and there's other grains that can be grown too, but we don't have the infrastructure, that's a whole nother set of equipment, storage, knowledge, that would be another, pretty significant investment for a farm plus more land. So we already know that if a farm grows all their own feed and doesn't buy grain, whether they're growing grain or they're just not feeding grain and they're growing more forage, you're looking at needing to have 5 to 7 acres per animal. So you got to think about that too. If I don't know how much land you have now, Jennifer, but if you did go grass fed, you'd need at least 5 to 7 acres to be able to support that, which most farms, even if they want to, don't have the land base. Because you got to replace, and it's,
So
Anyway.
you found, is it still then cheaper for Vermont farmers to purchase their grain than it is to try to grow their own?
it depends, it just depends on if they have land base, what kind of grain they want to grow. I mean, currently I'm working with a farm down in Paulette that, stopped growing corn silage when they went organic. And same situation Jennifer's talking about, where the grain bill is ridiculous. They have a budget for grain. Now they're exceeding it, not because they're feeding more grain, but because grain's more expensive. Plus it's, a lot of it's coming out of other countries. It's not even supporting other organic farms here in our country. It's coming from India, a lot of times, maybe sometimes Brazil. So quality, cost, all that stuff's unpredictable, even more so. And so now he's going to go back to growing corn silage, and he doesn't need that much to reduce or keep his grain bill where it needs to be. So, but, it just depends. Every situation is different.
Any other questions for Jennifer? Jennifer, you mentioned transportation several times. Do you pay to have your milk picked up and hauled, or is that, does that, the company pay that?
We pay a small portion of it. We have a flat fee, which is very low. And then we pay, I think it's like cents a hundredweight. It's very little. Organic Valley foots the majority of the bill.
So they pay that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions before we move on? If not, thanks a lot, Jennifer, for your time. And if you want to stay on and listen, of course, you're more than welcome, or this is recorded and you can pick it up later. Our next person is Abby Course from their dairy farm. Abby, good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I apologize for any background noise. I'm actually not at the farm right now. I'm on Cape Cod, and Dad and I are going to sort of tackle this together, if that works. I think this is he and I can present a little window into the function between a multi-generational family, if that is okay with everybody.
Absolutely.
Certainly.
And good morning from me also. And thank you for letting us testify on Zoom. It's much more feasible than driving 2.5 hours to get to Montpelier. We have borderline internet here at the farm, so I'm actually going to shut off my video so that I'll be less likely to get dropped entirely. I'm going to start because I have the questions in front of me at the moment. We milk between 55 and 60 cows. We have 40 to 45 young stock. We farm 348 certified acres, 93 are permanent pasture, 185 of hayland, and 70 acres that we use for both hayland and pasture. We also own about 200 acres of woodland.
No, he's just here.
We were certified in 2008. Prior to that, we were a founding Agrimark farm, and I was actually one of 92 Agrimark voting representatives who approved the merger with Cabot in 1992. Since we've been organic, Organic Valley has always been our milk handler. We are the 5th and 6th generations here. This farm has always grazed our cattle, and we have always been dairy for 53 years. Our whole farm is in permanent sod. We haven't put a plow in the ground in 35 years. We were the first farm in Vermont approved to host apprentices in the Dairy Grazing Apprenticeship Program. Our second apprentice just completed that program on September 3rd. It's been a great asset to us. Our cost of production over the past 5 years has averaged somewhere in the range of $32 to $33 a hundredweight. Our mailbox price has a seasonal variation, which ranges currently from about $31.10 in August to $37.80 in February, including all components and seasonal adjustments. In 2015, that range was from $36.50 to $41.10, $3 to $5 more per hundredweight, depending on the month. That difference is huge in terms of long-term farm viability. I wish we could go back there. We aren't terribly concerned about Organic Valley leaving. We were with Agrimark before, as I previously mentioned. Agrimark is still our handler, so they would take our milk if we lost our ability to ship to Organic Valley. Part of the reason I say we're not concerned about losing Organic Valley, I am one of the farmer leaders in Vermont of Organic Valley. I've been on the Dairy Executive Committee for 12 years. I am the Northeast representative on the Organic Valley National Pasture Committee, a position I've held for 11 years. And I'm on the 2020-21 Animal Care Task Force, one of 5 members nationwide to serve on that task force. So I guess you could say I'm an Organic Valley insider, and I'm pretty comfortable that they're here to stay. Other income that we have, occasionally forest products, but our primary driving force is milk and cull cattle. Abby?
Okay, and I said I would handle the off-farm income question because this is a really interesting example I think we can provide as a multi-generational farm. My parents were able to raise 3 kids off of the farm, and neither one of them ever needed to have off-farm income. And the farm actually was able to sustain 3 couples and 3 children off of a similar, the maple and the dairy split 6 years ago, 7 years ago, something like that. Which of course makes a big difference. But I, as both a mother and a farmer, am only able to farm at this moment because of my husband owning his own business and working off farm at the level of a farmer. You know, certainly I feel comfortable saying my quality of life, my ability to farm, my ability to be here and to continue our trajectory as a small family farm in Vermont is only possible at this moment because of the work that he does off farm, so that I can, and the commitment he has to me being able to continue that it's hard to say, and I think that the farming community even struggles when I say things like this, but I do feel I have to share this at some point that, you know, when you are the farmer and the mother, there's not a shuffling that happens with my kids. I can't, and the work that I need to do, I need to be focused on doing. I need to be able to show up for farming. I need to be able to drive the 7600 with the, 13 tons of manure in it behind it without being distracted. There's not a safe way to have a kid in that on 3 miles of back dirt roads and things like that. And so, the challenges that have been presented to our farm as I have transitioned into more of a prominent role in the farm, trying to juggle raising my children as well with my husband off farm, has raised some really interesting, has made the holes, I guess, in some of the things that we have, our lore around the family farm becomes pretty challenging in a situation like mine. And as more farmers as the number of women farming becomes more, these are things that I'm always kind of thinking about, is what challenges are we going to be faced with as more women want to be the farmers, et cetera, et cetera. So I apologize for co-opting that, but I thought that sets it up pretty clearly, some of the issues that we face with where our economics are and in the commodity marketplace for farm viability.
So the next
I'll turn it back
question
over to you.
is, the biggest challenge is the price of milk, because in my mind, if we had more money, we could solve the other challenges. In terms of what challenges we face, we do not have a labor problem. The dairy grazing apprenticeship program solved that. And we're able to have someone here who is enthused about farming and wants to learn at less than the going wage, and yet is still willing to get up every morning and do what needs to be done. One of our challenges here, we are 3 miles from the Massachusetts border, so we're not in a farming area, if you will. So equipment dealers are becoming scarce. One actually went out of business on the 4th of September. Another one is 26 miles away. The third one that we deal with is 64 miles away. So that's something that concerns me. As more and more farms go out of business, will the IBA dealer quit coming? Will the grain truck quit coming? All of those questions. In terms of risk management, we are a very unusual farm in that we are debt-free as of this past April, when we made the last payment on our solar system. So our risk is manageable. We do participate in the dairy margin coverage program at the 950 level, and we have received a lot of money from that in the last 2 years, and it's extremely helpful. If we could do something to improve our farm operation, we have 26 landlords. We would buy more land so that we could better control our destiny. Innovations, we've built a lot of cattle lanes, had more extensive pasture watering systems, more polywire and more fence posts, so we can better utilize pasture. We also installed a computerized cattle monitoring system, which we have had for almost 3 years, and we're finding that is very helpful. We have installed a variable speed vacuum pump, and we have a hot water preheater. The first one of those we installed was about 25 years ago, and those really pay for themselves rapidly. We installed a solar array in 2016, which creates 95% or so of our annual electricity for both the house and the barn. We also have a solar watering system for pasture, which pumps water from a remote spring to a holding tank at a high point in the pasture, and gravity feeds about 26 paddocks for the cows.
Well,
what could the state do? We could have more flexibility in the programs that are offered to help us. so that they fit the situation on individual farms. And water quality is a great place to bring that up. We investigated participating in some of the water quality improvement programs, particularly to do with a wetland in one of our pastures and a heavy use area. And because the rules were so stringent, we couldn't make that work because the setback from the wetland wasn't adequate. Yet there is a setback. So I think that the rules need to be a little more farmer friendly. And the other thing is, as Jennifer mentioned, the paperwork for all these things is incredible. So if we could have staff from, for example, the Department of Agriculture to work on our behalf and help us through these paperwork nightmares, it would allow us to keep farming while yet we were able to get involved in these programs. In terms of state actions, I came up with two. One is our current apprentice is just an awesome young man who is dying to have his own farm. And we have had a terrible time trying to find farms with no successors. We've gone to all the organizations you could name, and each one might give us one or two suggestions. And for whatever reason, none of those have seemed to pan out. A big factor, I feel, is that there's a lack of a retirement program for dairy farmers. They need to sell the farm for the highest possible price, usually for development, in order to fund their retirement. Maybe the state needs to think about a retirement program for farmers who are willing to pass on their farms to new farmers at less than the highest price they can get. And the second thing I'd like to mention is I think the state needs to recognize the huge, and I emphasize huge, role that dairy farmers play in the tourism industry. And I think a way that that could be done is to dedicate the rooms tax to assisting the preservation of dairy. Look at how Maine or Massachusetts assists dairy farmers. I serve on a cooperative board where all the other dairy farmers are from Massachusetts. They don't mince words about the fact that the subsidy from the state plays a major role in keeping them afloat. And some of them have actually shared the numbers they get every year from the state to help them stay in business. And we could easily hire an employee or two and pay them for a whole year on the amount of money that those farmers are getting from Boston. I repeat, think about dedicating the rooms tax to helping farms survive.
So if we have a little bit more time, there are a couple of things that I would add in, if that is okay, Senator Starr, or if you want me to drop
No,
off.
no. No, go ahead, Jennifer.
So I guess my third issue would be that based on my work within the Climate Council and sort of trying to think about how farms are remaining both viable and supportive of the environment moving forward as the climate becomes more volatile and things like that. I do, whether it's a PES system or something else, I do think that we want to really be thinking about that. Just the one thing that I would say is, I know from both the Climate Council and then with talking with folks in the PES working group, that a lot of the trouble that they're running into is that so much of what farmers are doing, because they're they're working within such complex ecosystem functions, is that it's really, really difficult to come up with a quantitative number as to how to compensate farmers. And I guess I would just like to say on the record that I do believe that at a certain point, as a state, we're going to have to make a decision as to whether we want to retain and support our natural and working lands as they exist, and even further enhance them to the benefit of our citizens, or whether we're going to let them fall away, because the way that the market is moving is towards consolidation. And, Vermont is small and our topography is what it is. And so I think at a certain point, we do need to consider, whether it's a program like they have in Europe, where, there's a tiering system, and they have determined that, for example, when I hear the numbers around LFOs or MFOs, it's striking that they can function at economies of scale. And of course, small farms can't. And so sometimes there's an argument about, well, that's just their bad business managers or whatever. And, certainly not all of us are perfect business managers, but I also think that small farms play a role in the way that our tourism industry functions, in the way that our local communities functions, and things like that, that holds an important value, just like side farms that are larger. And so I wonder if at a certain point we have to create a bit of a tiering system as to, we as Vermonters have determined that this is a valuable service you're providing to the state, and you're interested in investing in you being able to continue to do that. The other thing that I wondered about is, I sometimes just think about health insurance. My husband and I now, as self-employed people, have a $10,000 deductible health plan. As a young couple with kids and things like that, that can be a little frightening. I live with mental illness. So, things like that. I think I've been talking about it at the Climate Council level as a slight difference between farm viability and framing it as farmer viability. And so, what is it that farmers need to remain viable? We can talk about farm viability as long as we want, but if we don't have young farmers who can do the work that we need them to do, both from an economic standpoint and a cultural standpoint and a climate standpoint, environmental standpoint, I think we're really going to run into some trouble. And so, what can we do to say to, well, as I put it in the Future of Ag Commission meeting a couple of weeks ago, I dream of a day where a kid can go home from college and say to their parents, Mom and Dad, I want to be a farmer. And their parent doesn't just collapse into a pile of tears because they're not sure what that means for their kid's future. I think that farming can provide such an incredible quality of life and an amazing way to raise kids. And it's just, there's so much that you learn from growing up on a farm. There's so much that's inherent in you as a person from growing up on a farm, that I really think we need to be considering what it's going to take to keep, you heard Jennifer's stories about the economics of first generations farming, and that's what's happening with our apprentice as well. He basically needs an organic milk contract to be able to be viable for the bank. And that's a really difficult place to be in. And so anything that we can do to think about how we can, if we can't fix the economics of milk, what can we fix in other places? How can the state affect other areas that could bolster the ability of farmers to remain viable? Because from what I am seeing in the face of the changing climate, our local food security and our local chains that we can control production, where we can control better and understand where our food is coming from and how it's getting to Vermont citizens, the better off we're going to be with the volatility of the way that the national and international markets are starting to shift. So the other thing is that you asked in one of the questions if what the state could help with more innovative steps. I think one of the things that sometimes you run into, and I heard this when I was on the climate task force with Organic Valley, which was similar to the animal care task force. There was about 9 of us nationally that were on this within the cooperative. And the thing that you hear from a lot of farmers is, we're the good soldiers, and we're happy to be the good soldiers. We love what we do. We know that there's a trade-off, right? Like, we're not going to live lives like everybody else, because it's just farming is a lifestyle and it's something that you take on with your whole being. But, you know, there hits a point where the economics can't support continuing to just do the right thing because it's the right thing. And so when you hit a certain level, you just can't do anymore because the money isn't there. It's not that the will isn't there to do the right thing. It's that the economics don't bear out. And with all of the different factors, the fact that as a first generation farmer, you practically have to be a professional grant writer to make a farm work. You know, there's a lot there that I think we could bolster some systems to really help folks try to make their way through a little bit more sustainably.
Well, thank you, Abby. Are there questions for Abby or Leon?
Defense off.
Uh,
Defense off.
Pardon? John?
I think Jennifer was asking a farming question. Anyway, Leon and Abby, it is of course great to see you. Could you expand just for a minute on this apprenticeship program? How these students come to you, how you accept them, and I can fully understand the difficulty of finding a farm. You know, I assume that the biggest problem is capital. But am I right in that assumption? So just a few more words on the apprenticeship.
The dairy grazing apprenticeship program is based in Wisconsin, and it moved initially to Maine when it came to New England. And I heard about it, and I actually applied under the Maine program because it didn't exist in Vermont at the time. And what happens is the farmer applies, and the farmer is approved or not approved by a committee of other farmers as a mentor grazer. And once you're approved, then you have access to a list of potential apprentices. Right now, it's about 160 of them all across the country who are interested in learning about dairy farmers. And you read their profiles and pick and choose which ones to reach out to, and ultimately sort it down to whatever one you'd like to work with for the next 2 years. And you have an educational coordinator in Vermont, it's now Mary Ellen Franklin, who oversees your mentor apprentice situation on a monthly basis for the first 6 months, and then every other month for the rest of the apprenticeship. The challenge that we're finding with Mackenzie, our current apprentice who's looking for his own farm, is trying to find a farm that's in the size range he feels could be viable for him, from 50 to 80 cows. He wants to do most of the work himself. And when we find farms in that size range, it seems like the farmers just aren't ready to let go. They don't have that decision made in their head that they're willing to start that transition. And it seems like in lots of cases, it's because they don't know how they're going to retire. And so if there could be some state umbrella organization that just, or the Department of Agriculture, that just could collect information on farms that don't have a successor, to have this available so young people would know who to reach out to and start this conversation.
Thank you.
Did you have a follow-up?
No, thank you.
Jackie?
Thank you. Hey, it's good to see Abby and Leon. Thanks for coming in here. Leon, I got to say, I was one of the farmers that voted against that merger, so I guess we kind of offset our votes with the Cabot Agrimark thing. But I think there's another problem beyond the fact that you can't find the farms. It's right now, there's no market for that milk. And, it doesn't matter if you can find a place to go. Nobody is taking extra milk. So I think that listening to the concerns about the processing abilities in the Northeast or someone to take that milk is just as important as finding a farm for these young folks. And I do appreciate you raising that issue because I think they go hand in hand. We've got to be able to put these young people on farms, but we also have to be able to find a market for that milk, and that's just not happening right now. So just wanted to make sure that the committee knew that goes hand in hand. It's just, it's a really hard issue. Thanks.
The one other thing I would say too about some of the things we've noticed with the dairy grazing. So with our first apprentice, it's funny because at least so far, it's become very clear within the first few weeks of like who is a dairy farmer and who isn't. And so with our first, when we were doing his business planning, I had to have a really frank conversation with him about, and I think Dad and I really hadn't thought about this aspect, but when you're coming to a farm like ours, I mean, we don't have debt. We are able to go away from the farm. There's a quality of life component that these young folks are seeing when they're learning on a farm that's as well established as ours is. And that is quite often not a replicable situation for a first generation farmer. And so the first generation farmers that I talk to, I mean, the fact that I'm away for 4 days with my family is something that is not even remotely a concept that they can consider. Most young farmers that I know, they're not even getting away from their farm for a night every 3 years. And so that's another one of the things that's a hard conversation to have and a tricky thing to try to teach. You're seeing all these things here. We really want you to have quality of life while you're here. Please take care of yourself, go to your doctor's appointments, get your dentist appointments in while you have this net of support here. But it's a huge leap to then go to having your own farm as a first generation farmer with a very deep uncertainty as to like, what's it going to look like when I want to have kids? What's it going to look like when am I ever going to contemplate having a vacation again? I had to tell Cody, like, basically, if you're not ready to contemplate the next 5 years after purchasing your farm of working 7 days a week, at least 10 to 14 hours a day, then I'm not sure I can comfortably say that you're ready to take this on or that this is going to be a viable decision for your well-being and for your farm. And that's hard, I think, particularly when there is so much, I've started calling, thanks to a friend, the grant pools as like the Hunger Games, So when there's all these grant pools and all this money that you're competing for and things like that, I just totally lost my train of thought. But anyway, I think it's just, there is so much to try to contemplate as a young farmer taking on a farm. Oh, that's what it is. And the people who are helping you obtain the grants, maybe they're not, living it up super great, but comparatively to the farmer, they likely have health insurance access. They likely have some of these things that we consider to be normal. And I think that's the lines generationally are starting to be, the younger generations are sort of like, I don't know that I can take that on. I'm not sure that I'm willing to like give over my entire being to this farm and also not be sure about these other 10 things in terms of how my whole life is going to go. And so I do think, whether it's that even something, I don't know, do farmers have immediate access into the Medicaid pool or something, which I'm sure quite a number of them are already there. But, is that a benefit that the state could offer, because then you could say, oh, you're a new farmer coming in, you have little kids, like here's the benefit the state offers for you to be a farmer is you get to automatically bypass income requirements into this Medicaid pool. The young farmers start to balance off the older farmers who are, have more health concerns, and then they can go into Medicare. I know it's another state program. It's not my favorite suggestion. It's just one of the ones that I've thought of. So anyway, I'll leave it there.
Yeah, thank you, Abby. Are there any other questions? We're running
Really quick
late.
question. Really quick question. Where does your milk go when it goes down the road?
It goes the same as Jennifer's, most of the time to Stonyfield and some of the time to the Booth plant to be put in the Organic Valley carton.
Thanks.
Yep. Well, we want to thank both of you for your time and it was a great discussion and a lot of good testimony. And so thank you very much. And we're going to move on to Russ Putney.
Thank you. Thank you so much for allowing us the time. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And for all of your hard work in this arena.
So is Russ with us?
Peter Miller speaking instead of Russ.
Peter Miller is here. I don't
If-
have Russ.
I guess Russ doesn't hear.
Yeah, so looks like we added Peter Miller.
So is Peter Miller with us?
Yes, I am. I'm driving a dump truck right now, so I'm going to leave my my video off so I'm not distracted. We have two employees that have, well, a business partner and an employee that have COVID, so I ended up having to drive dump truck today. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, yes, and thanks for being with us.
So I have a headset, so I should be just fine. I'll pull off the side of the road. I can do that much.
Well, yeah, I hope so. Peter,
He's pulling off, Hank. Just give him a chance to pull off the road.
I can listen if you guys want to start with a few questions for me to start off with.
Okay, if you want to give us a description of your farm, who's your handler and just general thoughts on the makeup of your farm, off-farm income. You were starting to explain employees, just so introduce your farm.
Okay, so our farm is in Vernon, Vermont, down in the southeast corner. The dairy farm is three partners, myself and my brother Arthur Miller and Keith Franklin. We are all in our mid-50s. Our milk is going to Stonyfield. We are one of their direct supply farms. And we've been, prior to that, we started organic with Organic Valley and have a really good working relationship with Organic Valley and a good vibe with them. We switched to the direct supply with Stonyfield for, we'll just say complicated reasons, but no hard feelings with Organic Valley at all. We've been shipping since 2009. Okay, I'm parked now, so I'll turn my video on. Anyway, we are on about 300 acres of our own, and we lease about another 400. So we're milking with our whole milking herd is between about 190 and 200. We may eventually bump up a little bit and go MFO, but we're currently still under the 200 cow threshold. And we need more buildings and facilities before we add more cows.
Herd average, production, pay price, cost of production, however you want to describe, with labor, without. So how you manage the economics of the farm. Are you on any kind of a base excess plant with Stonyfield, or is that not part of the calculation? Do you have a contract? So
we have a contract with Stonyfield. They did cut our price significantly within the last few years. Our actual with our components and everything, the formula is quite complex. So our actual pay price is running somewhere about $34 a hundredweight. We're very grateful for that. We don't have any quota with Stonyfield. They will take what we produce. One of the things that we do have with Stonyfield is the ability to divert up to 15% of our milk. And so we started, well, when COVID hit, we actually started work toward bottling ourselves a little bit because we saw the vulnerabilities in the national food system. They were shutting down meat processing plants. They were dumping conventional milk. And incidentally, the demand for Stonyfield yogurt went up. And yet we got whacked with a bit of a price decrease. But I think that was kind of a conservative move on their part. But that was probably the catalyst for us to start bottling a bit ourselves. We got a converted shipping container from Don's Dairy out in New York, and we started bottling in October. Our organic milk is available through a couple distributors here in the state, and it's going all around southern Vermont quite readily, and has made it up as far as Burlington, I guess at the city market south, and is in the UVM medical facility up there and some of the cafes. We have chocolate and maple milk we've added, and the sales have been strong and the reception has been great. We know that what's happening for us can't happen for everybody in the state because, good grief, we would flood the state of Vermont with milk. And so our milk really needs to start flowing south and east. I applied for milk handler permit in Massachusetts a couple different ways. I don't know if they're trying to stonewall us or what, but they have not ever responded to me. They cashed my checks, but they haven't given me a license. And so I am not able to go into Massachusetts yet. And I've been at it since January or February. I do have a license to go into New Hampshire with their milk. I have not pursued that extensively, but anyway, we are all around in southern Vermont at this point.
And have you called our Department of Ag to help you procure that Massachusetts license? Because usually they work quite closely together, and maybe our department could call that department on your behalf.
Okay, I can do that. Thank you.
So just keep private testimony, or ask other people have questions.
Yeah. Do you folks, any members have questions for Peter? John?
Peter, this is John Roberts. So are you now bottling 15% that you can divert, and would you like to bottle more?
We are not bottling 15%. We're bottling actually only about 3 to 5%. If we were to go all the way to the 15%, we would really be maxing out our little facility. So we are very happily shipping milk to Stonyfield still. I don't know that we have any intention to grow a whole lot more than maybe twice as much as what we're currently producing. It's been a real privilege to have the balancing that Stonyfield gives us. And I don't know that we really want to grow a whole lot more than that. We have, even with that, we have been able to generate a couple salaries. And so we've picked up more labor. And so that feels beneficial for our local economy as well.
And how, Peter, how's that, your milk sell? Is it a profit maker or, because we keep hearing people say, well, there's no money in selling milk. You know, we can't pay anymore because there's no money in it. So are you making a profit selling your bottled milk?
We actually are. It's a modest profit. We will never get rich. I took after the model that Organic Valley used to have in what they called the fork in the road. Namely, I determined what it cost to make the milk and a reasonable return, and set our price at that level. So I only sell what people are willing to buy at that price point. So I guess right from the beginning, I've set up what price I'm willing to take. And and I've already increased our price just a little bit, just to keep up with the input costs.
Yep. Thank you. There are other questions for Peter from any of the members of the committee?
John's got his hand up.
John? Yes, John.
Thanks, Bobby. Just quickly, Peter, what brand is your milk bottled under?
It's bottled under Miller Farm.
Okay.
Our LLC is called Miller Milk, but we're doing business as Miller Farm. Some of the things that come to my mind is that other farmers could replicate our model, but probably only a couple in the state. Certainly in organic, I think that there's not much more room for a lot more milk unless there's some way that we can get into the food service, namely the schools. I've created these 8-ounce bottles just within the last month. And actually there are some private schools that are starting to pick up the little 8-ounce bottles and use them in their schools. But we can't, as an organic product, we can't compete with, a 23-cent milk carton. I have that much into packaging alone, never say labor and product. But I would love to see if there is some way to get that subsidized through local food grants or something, that the kids could get our milk. One of the things that I've been told by for example, the public schools that I've spoken with, is that they're required by some sort of federal cost share program to serve a reduced fat milk, i.e. skim milk or 2% or less. I do not separate. I only do a creamline whole milk, my chocolate and the maple. And so we're not even eligible apparently to be in the schools through the federal subsidized programs. I don't know if you have read the research, but animal fat is actually necessary for brain growth and development. The research has been showing recently. And so we're really doing our kids a pretty significant disservice by feeding them skim milk. Of course, it tastes disgusting too, but I would love to see our product get into the schools, especially.
Peter,
Go ahead, John.
Oh, thanks, Bobby. I just also wondered how, I mean, it's one thing to bottle milk and another to get it out there, to retail. And so how did you do that transformation?
We have a dual path. We bought a little delivery truck and I just went around with the milk, and I went around with the milk to all the little stores and such in my area, and I've been super well received. And they taste the product, they look at the product, and they're very happy to try it, and then it sells well because we have a very receptive public. But then I also picked up 2 distributors. I'm using Food Connects, and I'm also using Upper Valley. And so that has reached out a lot further than I want to drive.
Yeah, thank you. Heather, I think you had your hand up. Do you have a question at this point?
I think Peter already answered it. I was just curious how, what you were packaging into, and if you had other, not like only whole milk products, or if you're going skim and reduced fat, but you already answered that. Thanks. Hope you're well.
Good morning, Heather.
Thanks. Are there any other questions for Peter at this point in time?
I just have a quick comment on Peter's comment about having to, not being able to supply schools the milk is, this is part of federal nutrition program, which the dairy industry has been unsuccessfully fighting for years. And Peter's absolutely right that I believe the research shows more and more that full fat milk, full fat dairy products are really beneficial and don't cause weight gain. The obesity problem is sort of focused on the fat of the milk and not focused on the other benefits of fat in the right kind of fat in dairy products. So just a comment. Thanks.
Yeah. If there are no other questions for Peter, we want to thank you for your time and we know you're busy. You're in the cab of your truck. So we want to thank you for taking your time and sharing your thoughts with us.
Yeah, just another comment, if I could throw it out there. I would love to see us, I don't know, potentially try to do more for New England origin milk products. I don't know. I know the Grafton cheese plant sits empty here in Brattleboro. I know they've kind of retracted back to Brattleboro, but I know that there's an HTST line sitting there empty.
Yep.
And they've got milk silos sitting empty. I don't know if there's any use for that, but anyway, and I don't know the particulars, but I sure hate seeing stuff sit empty. And I hate to think of, for example, a bunch of cheaper Midwest milk flowing in, say, to fill the hole that Horizon's leaving. I'd love to see that replaced with milk produced here, processed here, and marketed here in the Northeast. I don't know if I'm just preaching to the choir there, but it just seems if we have the facilities, if the informed consumer can latch on to some New England product, I've found a very receptive public to a locally produced product. But thank you all for your time. I appreciate you looking into this stuff, and I know these issues are complex, and I appreciate having a voice.
Well, thanks again, and thanks for the tip on the manufacturing availability down your way. I don't know, we got time to take a short break. Um, we have Nicole with us. Nicole, how's your time schedule? Have you got a few minutes to wait, if we take a 10-minute break?
Yeah, absolutely. We can take a 10-minute break.
Okay, thanks a lot. So we'll take a little quick break and then be back by quarter after, we're gonna fire back up. So thank